Shabbat Shalom. Welcome to STI, Suomi Torah International, to our Shabbat Torah discussion, Acharei Mot. Take it away.
Well, shalom, shalom everybody, and welcome to another Torah reading. We're starting at Vayikra or Leviticus 16. And I'm glad to say that the regular people are here, John and James. So hopefully we're going to have a great discussion today. John, would you like to take it away in prayer?
Sure. Dear Heavenly Father, we do come before you. Oh, Abba, we thank you so much for being a Father who loves us, who knows our needs, our wants, our desires, and Father, I pray that you would direct and guide each one of us. There's things on our hearts and on our minds, family members and those who are distant from you. We pray for them, Father, and we pray that you would either give us the words and the opportunity or put someone else in their lives that they might come to a true knowledge of who you are and your love for us and what your son did on the cross so many years ago, that we might have access to the Holy of Holies through him, that we can enter into that place by his blood. I pray that you'd help each one of us to guard that in our lives, to keep our mind focused on what it means to serve you, to be a doulos for you, to be a called out one that you've called us to be, to set ourselves apart from the world through the Shabbat, which we're celebrating today, through the Moedim that you've set aside in different times and in different seasons, Father, that we as a people group might be a peculiar people, that we might be a called apart people, that we could be saints for you, and that people might see you through us and through our actions and through our love for one another. As it says in Acts, they marveled how they loved one another. And so I pray that you would help us to do that as well. Help us to live a life that brings glory and honor to you in everything that we do, in everything we say, in everything that we are. It's in Yahushua's name I pray. Amen.
Amen. Thank you. Thank you, John. Oh, there, I just unmuted myself. Sorry about that. Yeah, so now we see a strange thing here in Leviticus 16 in the beginning. It says, and Yahweh spoke unto Moshe after the death of the two sons of Aaron, when they offered before Yahweh and died. And Yahweh said to Moshe, speak unto Aaron your brother, that he comes not at all times into the holy place within the veil before your mercy seat, which is upon the ark, that he die not. So here we already see the two sons that die, and I don't know, John, would you and James, would you like to add something to that? Because I know you guys will have something to say. It would be great if you could say something.
Well, as always, I have something to say, but yeah, it is interesting that this is how this works with him and being behind the veil, and how this works, because it says I will appear in a cloud above the mercy seat, right? So that's Yah speaking. So he's saying, when I'm there, this is a very important thing when you enter into this place. And I'd like to read a little bit more before I add it to that, because it says in verse 3, and Aaron entered into the most holy place in this way, with a young bull as a sin offering and a ram for a burnt offering. He was to wear the holy linen tunic, undergarments, to be on his body. He must tie linen sash around him and wrap his head with linen turban. These are the holy garments. He must bathe his body in water before he wears them. He is to take from Yasharel community 2 male goats for a sin offering and 1 ram for a burnt offering. And when I was reading through that this morning, I wrote down next to this, because we had talked about this before, Ephesians 6, and putting on the whole armor, right? So in this is this picture that I see. Aaron is actually putting on the armor of Yah in order to walk into his presence.
Amen.
And so when I saw that, I thought, wow, how important is that then for us to be putting on that armor, right? So that we can then be in his presence. We need to be doing the same thing as Aaron, because now we are, I don't know exactly how you want to word it. We're going to be priests, or we are priests, you know, as it says in Revelation 1. So that's this picture that I have, is this, that we need to be putting on the armor in order to walk into there, because when Yah is there, we need to be in the right frame of mind. We need to be in the right clothing, and we need to be covered with the blood, right? That of this offering, but this is Yahusha's blood that covers us in order for us to come into that holy place. So that's kind of what I saw in that very first part.
Yeah.
So,
and James, have you got something on that part to add, or not really?
Yeah, so when I'm looking at this first section, we see that Yahweh gives very strict instructions, you know, even washing procedures to perform these rituals, these sacrifices, even down to the clothes that they're wearing. And so when you think of it as the Torah is our instructions, we can see with Aharon's 2 sons, because they did not follow those instructions. They offered up strange fire. They were met with death. And I think that's a very grave warning to us as well. If we're not following those instructions that he gave for us as well, you know, ultimately that can be our demise. It's kind of what I'm seeing it.
Yeah. I would just like to draw attention to one scripture, which is in Leviticus 10, which we shared today a little bit of. And in Leviticus 10 and verse 9, it says, "Do not drink wine nor strong drink." This is now to the priests, right? "Do not drink wine nor strong drink, you nor your sons with you, when you go into the tabernacle of the assembly, lest he die. It shall be a statute forever throughout your generations, and that he may put difference between holy and unholy, between unclean and clean, that he may teach the children of Yasharel the statutes which Yahweh has spoken unto them by the hand of Moshe." Which is also interesting that that, you know what, at this time, be holy. At this time, be prepared when you come into the Holy of Holies to be sanctified, to be separate unto me. Now, I'm not sure. I mean, I knew that they did drink alcohol. I just don't know if, you know, when, well, exactly when, but I think at this time, especially at the time of tabernacles, especially at the time of the feasts, Shabbat and Pesach or Passover, or Pesach, sorry, that they were to be prepared for these times, and sanctified, and not being with their women, and not drinking wine, because it is a time of solemn feasts. And I think that sort of brings it back then to be holy as I am holy. You know, it's just one. It's just I suppose another facet of the duties. I think to this time.
Well, and remember, Chris, this is leading up to or specifically about the Day of Atonement, where he's making atonement for the sins of Yasharel and for his sins. So he has to make atonement for his sin first, and then for the sins of Yasharel. So this is this prerequisite coming in here, setting things up for him, right? For the Day of Atonement, right?
Yeah, yeah. And I think, you know, John, just to add on that is that the holiness or the sanctification was not just of the temple, it was also of the people and the priests. And when you do such a thing, you have to take it seriously. You know, it's like anything in the word is pretty a serious matter. You know, it's we don't take these things lightly. And therefore, and I think we all are of the same thought that when we're talking about the word, it's not about, yeah, maybe this could have happened or maybe that is, well, don't speak like that. Rather say, this is what happened. And if we don't know, then let us rather research before we surmise something to be true. I just think maybe that's a better way for us to go forward as well, because we make mistakes, you know, and when we come to the word, let us not err because we're thinking of our own in our own intelligence or in our own frame of mind, but let's rather just research a little bit more in the word.
Well, and to be sober-minded as well. You know, there's many verses mentioning that, and it is interesting how, you know, right after the death of Aharon's two sons, that it is mentioned, you know, and I'm seeing in the chat here, you know, clothed in righteousness. If we're not sober-minded, you know, we're not being clothed in righteousness, we're not being pure. And so I think that's another warning to that we see throughout scriptures, you know, to stay sober-minded so that the Ruach can dwell within us.
Yeah, I think definitely there's something there. Okay, and then he takes the holy garments, obviously, and the linen breeches, and we see it's all linen, and we know that that's probably because of the voltage or the whatever was happening in there. It was to me it speaks of single-mindedness as well. You know, it speaks of let us be clothed. You know, it brings it back to Revelation 3, where it says, you know, to the church of Laodicea, I counsel from you to buy from me white linen, and eye salve and gold refined in fire, which I think we're going to come to later on, because it ties in pretty well with the Besorah portion, if we're going to get that far. So,
right.
and
Yeah.
then obviously, sorry, John.
Well, I would just say, you know, some of that could be speculation, but about the voltage or whatever. But this is his command. So it falls right down to this is his command. Once again, I desire obedience, not sacrifice, for whatever reason. But this is his command. Put these clothes on, and that's it. You know. And so I agree. It could very well be speculation of but there was definitely some kind of power, because I mean Uzzah was pulverized, right, when he put out his hand. So there was definitely like something that can change you into ash in a flash. Right. So we, you know, and I think that comes back then to the Holy of Holies. You know, don't mess with things of Yah. It is, you know, he's such a great force to be reckoned with, that we really would love to be with him and never against him, if I can put it like that. You know? It's a weird thing to say, because it's kind of a human way of putting things, which doesn't quite make sense, I think, in the realm or in the thought of Yah. But
Yeah, I think it's, I don't know if anybody want to add to that, what you're thinking there. But if not, okay, let's go on to verse 8. And Aaron casts lots upon the two goats, one for Yahweh and the other for Azazel. And Aaron shall bring the goat upon which Yahweh's lot fell, and offer him for a sin offering. But the goat which the lot fell to be for Azazel shall be presented alive before Yahweh to make atonement with him, and to let him go for Azazel into the wilderness. Should I begin there, or John, would you like to begin, or James, or anybody else? All right, I'll begin.
Yeah, go ahead.
All right.
I think we all have the
All right.
same thought here.
Yeah. So in Matthew 27, we see Barabbas, or Barnabas, as we might know him, and we see that the scribes and the Pharisees shouting for this person, stirring up the crowd, so that they ask this person to be let go. And Mashiach, who is innocent, without blemish, to be sacrificed, or rather to be crucified, whatever form that is. We're not going to dispute that right now, but the fact that he was the one that was given up for the illful death, punishment of death, because he was absolutely blameless and without spot. But they choose the murderer to be let go. Now it's very interesting that Aaron, with the blood and so on, anoints the head of the scapegoat, if you will, and then it's led by a fit man. We'll see that in chapter 18, I think. No, it's later on in the chapter, into the wilderness. So I think we'll leave that part until when we get to it. Why Azazel? Why do you think there's one for Azazel? Just to put it out there, because I think that's quite an interesting subject to touch on.
Azazel is, and when I looked that up years ago and found out, okay, that means scapegoat. And but then when you read the book of Enoch, it says in there to ascribe all sin to Azazel, who was a fallen angel. So that's a very interesting thing, that he's ascribing that sin to Azazel. So that's this picture. So the sin is put on him and he's taken into the wilderness, right? Well, you're right about Barabbas, right? Because we are Barabbas. We were the ones deserving of death, and yet Yahusha took that death upon us. So in some sense, we're this picture, right? We're the ones deserving of death, yet being set free by the blood, the atoning blood of Yahusha.
Yep. Yeah, I got that. Is that I was thinking today, well, okay, what happened in the sin, the ultimate sin, the first sin, put it that way? A man gave right to the fallen ones to have dominion over them, because it's the same as what Romans says is if you agree to someone, then you fall under them. If you agree to a statute, then actually you submissive to the statute you agree with. So what happened was, and this is open for debate, which everything is. Man agreed to give Azazel a place on this earth, and because of that, we fell under a curse of Azazel, which is basically the law of Azazel, because Azazel can't help himself from killing, stealing, and destroying, because he's part of this devil system. So interesting on chapter 15 of Enoch and verse 3 to 5, I'm just going to read it. You being spiritual, holy, and possessing a life which is eternal, have polluted yourselves with women. This is now talking to the fallen, right? Have begotten in carnal blood, have lusted in the blood of men, and have done as those who are of who are of flesh and blood. These, however, die and perish. Therefore have I given to them women, that they might cohabit with them, the sons might be born of them, and that this might be transacted upon the earth. Which is interesting because, it's verse 6 says, but you from the beginning were made spiritual, possessing a life which is eternal and not subject to death forever. Therefore, I made not woman for you, because being spiritual, your dwelling is in heaven. Then verse 8 says, now the giants who have been born of the Ruach and of flesh shall be called upon the earth evil Ruachoth, and on the earth shall be their habitation. Evil Ruachoth shall proceed from their flesh, because they were created from above, from the holy watchers, as was their beginning and primary foundation. So that's kind of an insight to, okay, well, this evil Ruachoth then had a dominion on this earth via these people that were born unto them, or these entities that were born unto them. And then we know it progressed after that to Noah. But the point is that there is a rightful place for this kingdom, if you will. I'm going to call it a kingdom. It's an evil kingdom, right? And so, as Yah is a lawful Yah, is a lawful Elohim. Everything works under law for him. He doesn't go and say, well, I'm going to just diminish you. I'm going to wipe you out, and you're not going to exist anymore because you polluted my prize creation. He says, okay, I've got a solution for this prize creation of mine, which is those that choose me and walk according to my statutes. Those will be called Yasharel. And as for you, I'm putting all those curses upon, because I'm putting the curse upon this scapegoat. Then I'm leading it out into the wilderness. And we know what the wilderness does. It steals, it kills, and it destroys, especially a goat that is blaring out there without a shepherd. The wilderness will get hold of it and kill it. Well, by doing that, you are putting upon yourself all the curses which we have put upon this goat. And I think that's the same thing that happened to Yahusha, because when he was killed having all the curses of man upon him. So, we see that same depiction then again in the crucifixion. And I see Lois has got something to say, and Dan. So Lois, please take it away.
Well, no, I have a question, because something just struck as you read that. It says, and I don't have access to the other books, but you said ascribe all sin to Azazel. And if I think about ascribing all righteousness to Yah and all glory to Yah, and then I think that he took and paid for the sin. So when the Azazel, or the dragon, or the devil, or whatever we call him, is finally ascribed all of the sin, then I think about us. Will we be ascribed our sin, or has it been ascribed and paid for? Is there something we are missing in this whole thing? I think of the millennium in this. I just can't get off of it. And I keep thinking, are we missing something? If all sin has been ascribed to our enemy, and the righteousness, everything's been paid for by our Yah. I don't know. It's a question.
So in Romans 2 and in Revelation 20, it's very specific that it says that we're judged upon our works. We're not judged upon our belief, not our faith, not anything else but our works. And those works, I think, are in obedience to what his word says. Are we being obedient? Are we following through on what he says? Right? In Ephesians 2:10, there's works that are preordained by Yah ahead of time. Are we in those works? And that's not necessarily the lady crossing the street. I think those are the works that Yah set apart for us to do ahead of time. And so I think that's this picture that you're, I guess, is the picture I'm looking at, Lois, is that's what we're judged on. So you're right. The sin is already placed. The atonement is already done, but we're going to be judged on how we are in him, in his, are we walking in righteousness? Are we being saints before him? Are we being set apart or holy? Are we doing the things that he's called us to do? I hope that answers. I don't know. Maybe somebody else has something to say too.
I think that's very interesting, John. And I think what we'll do is we'll save this to the Besorah portion as well, because in the Besorah portion, we see the talents that are given and hidden, but it says transacted, which is a very interesting word, which I read today, which also sort of was a bit of a moment. And what is that word, transacted? Because it's a form of passing some kind of value for something, or for something, or buying something, right? Counsel you to buy from me. Well, and then Zechariah, we can come back to that, where you can buy without money. Well, what is that you buy without money? And the righteousness of Yah is not something that we can get. It's something that's transacted, but it's not something that we buy with money.
Right. That's why we lay up our treasures in heaven, right?
Exactly. Right. Yeah. Beautiful scriptures. Dan, shalom.
Shalom, brothers and sisters. I don't know. I'm coming from a different angle here about why he released the goat into the desert. He was really angry at Azazel. He had Raphael bind him and put him in the Dudael for all eternity until the end. And then he's going to cast him into the lake of fire. He was really mad at Azazel. And the reason he was really mad at Azazel was because Azazel brought us weapons, war. He brought us makeup and fornication and all kinds of different things. He was really angry at Azazel.
Yeah.
So when the sins were put onto that goat, and that goat was sent into the wilderness, maybe was it to remind Azazel of what he did?
I think so, Dan. I really do think you're right there. And I think it's important because Azazel, that's in Enoch 8, if I'm correct.
Right.
He basically teaches the whole world about things that they should not know. And then he's bound up. But remember, all his angels that were with him, they weren't all bound up.
That's right.
So they still work these things upon the earth. And there's one thing about the devil, if you will, as an entity, right? It's not one person. The devil is just like a
representation.
Group. Right. I mean, they kill, they steal, and destroy. And so that reminder, we've got another thing and John and I have spoken about this as well in Enoch 69, which is called the oath, the beaker oath, by which Yah creates this whole creation. And it's very interesting that when you look at that, there is a certain way that Yah has created the ocean, the heavens and the whole of creation. And it works by a certain set of laws and rules. And anything that goes against these Yah-given rules are things that break, that kill, that steal and destroy. And we see, the breaking up of the crust of the earth, for example, especially maybe after sin. It's also speculation and so on. But we see that these things are happening more and more and more towards the end of time. And that's prophecy too. So, what does it tell us? It says that sin kicks you out of the land. That's what we read today in our reading. So what does sin do? Sin actually destroys your future for where you are at. And you've got to move. And when you move into territory which you're not the boss of, which you're not part of, which other peoples deem you a alien, and that's a problem for your life. It's not easy to do to walk into these things. Does that make sense, James? Dan?
Oh yeah.
Okay. James.
Last night, Lee shared this interesting perspective on the two goats, and I just wanted to add it to the mix. That the two goats represent two different types of people. Those who are willing, obedient servants to Yahweh, who is committed to the narrow path, a willing sacrifice of his life to serve before Yahweh. The example given to us is our Yahushua HaMashiach. The goat for Azazel represents a haughty and proud person who chooses to live his life as he sees fit, his own way, separate from Yahweh, and sent out into the wilderness. While it may seem the goat sacrificed is the loser in this scenario, it is quite the opposite. The goat sacrificed is completely dedicated to Yahweh. The other is sent out into the wilderness, more likely to die from starvation or killed by animals without any protection. That protection that we get from Yah. And so I'm kind of seeing this as the goat offered in obedience to Yahweh versus the goat offered to Azazel, who created or who established and multiplied wickedness and sin. It's almost like a sin offering for him, in a way. That's kind of where I was seeing it, but just a different kind of perspective, I thought.
Yeah, that's great. And that's the beautiful thing about the word, first of all, and sharing with people, right? Like this, sharing in a community, in a fellowship, is that we get all these different facets, and not one of them are wrong, not one of them are incorrect when we led by the Ruach Elohim. It's just that everything is really just adding to a bigger picture, and we're starting to see this picture in a better light, maybe, and although the curse becomes a blessing for us. That's what I see. What you've just said now, James, is that that curse that you have upon your life, maybe it's because of ancestry, maybe it's because of your own pride and whatever. But that can be turned to be a blessing for you because Yah loves you if we just call upon his name, right? And I think that's very important to keep in the back of our minds as well.
Yeah. So then as we drop down here to verse 15, right, it says, when he slaughters the male goat for the people's sin offering and brings its blood inside the veil, he must do the same with the blood as he did with the bull's blood, and he sprinkle it against the mercy seat and in front of it. And so as I was looking at the Azazel goat and then the blood of the sin, what came to my mind is Matthew 25, and it's the separation of the sheep and the goats, because the sheep hear the voice of the shepherd, right? But yet the goats don't. But he separates the sheep and the goats here in Matthew 25 because they don't follow what he told them to do, right? When I was hungry, when I was thirsty, all of those things. It says all nations are gathered before him, and he will separate them one from another as a shepherd separates the sheep from the goats. And I found this interesting parallel then, that the sin of the goat is that what separates the sheep from the goats. Is the goat is now full of sin because he will not obey. He doesn't do what Yah has commanded him to do. He He doesn't want to show love. He doesn't take care of his brothers and sisters. He's this guy. But the sheep, oh, well, when did we see you hungry or thirsty? And he says, what you've done to the least of these, you've done to me. And I just see that parallel here in Leviticus 16 as we're reading this.
Absolutely brilliant. Yeah, lovely. Thank you. Yeah, so 16, and he shall make atonement for the holy place because of the uncleanness of the children of Yasharel, and because of their transgression in all their sins. And so shall he do for the tabernacle of the assembly that remains among them in the midst of their uncleanness. It's absolutely amazing how Yah is so long suffering, that although the deeds and the people were such, well, hard-headed, they were hard-headed, but not only that, they were actually going against the will of Yah. And he still says, you know, I'm doing all these things because I love you, because I want you, because you are my people, which I put my name upon, and I will preserve you and keep you. And you know, we were just talking about that a little bit today as well, is how can a Yah be so loving towards people who reject him, well, decade after decade after decade, and then time after time after time. And just for a brief moment of time, we get somebody like Josiah or whoever is reading scriptures and they come back. But but really they're just so far away, right? And it's amazing to see how much love Yah has for us, that he cares for us in that way, in that manner. Although he's holy, although he's far above the thoughts and of man.
I think the perfect verse to summarize what you were just saying is 1 John 2, verse 2, referring to Yahusha. And he is the propitiation for our sins, and not for our sins only, but also for the sins of the whole world. Everyone.
Amen. For Yah so loved the world. I mean, you know, this is the thing that we don't understand. Well, we do understand it, but sometimes we don't get it. We think that, well, thank Yah, we've been called. Thank Yah, he's showed us the way. Well, he doesn't just want us to know the way. He wants everyone to know the way. So it is our duty to actually tell people the way, right? It's our duty to tell people the right and the wrong, and what we should and shouldn't do, and that we should get to understanding and loving Yah as primary in our lives, and not you know, the things that we always after as man, right?
I have a question for you. I was wondering if it's tied, would this be the right thinking that, you know, I can't remember what they call it when they lay it on the altar, when the veil was rent and it's red and it turns white. I believe that's when they release the goat.
The Urim and the Turim.
And they released the goat, and then it no longer did it after Yahushua was, and then I don't know how long after that happened that he died, that it was torn down Jerusalem. But I'm thinking about all that time before it was destroyed.
Mary, you know, the Holy of Holies were without the tabernacle since Jeremiah. So the fact that there were usurpers to this priesthood is a very real fact, because there wasn't the power that was behind the veil as it was in these times of Moshe. So now remember what the Pharisees, the scribes, or the priests said to Yahusha. They said, "We are also of the seed of Avram, but we have not been in bondage." So they're basically admitting that they were not of the children of Mitzrayim. They were of Avram, but they were not in Mitzrayim. They were not in bondage. But they usurped this priesthood, which was Levitical in nature. And they were doing some of the temple things, and that's why, like John the Baptist, he was supposed to be the high priest of the day, but he was pushed aside because of this exact thing that was happening. Now, the Urim and the Turim, they weren't in the temple as such. They were on the ephod, they were in the clothing.
She's speaking of what was hung on the door of the temple, right?
Oh.
So then that was scarlet, and then Yah turned it white every year until the death of Yahusha. Then after that, for 40 years, it did not turn white until the destruction of the temple. So
right.
That's what she's speaking of there.
Okay. Yeah. All right. I got that. Okay. Thanks for helping me there.
So,
but anyway, the point is still that there was a usurping of this throne, and the fact that the tent was rent when Yahusha died is just to show everybody, listen, well, look here, look inside, see what these people have been doing, right? And I think that's quite important to take note of, because even it reminds me of the narrow road. It reminds me of the narrow path of Fourth Ezra. It's nobody can come next door to you on that path. You have to walk alone. And there's a wall of fire on the one side, and there's a great deep abyss on the other side. And so your way to salvation, or your walk, is only for you. Got nothing to do with anybody else. And I think that's quite important to take onus of, so that we can grab hold of our own relationship with Yah, and not rely on our husbands or our wives or our friends or our pastors or whoever it is, right? I don't know if that's going to answer your question, maybe.
Yeah, I was just saying that I thought it was tied to the goat in the ceremony process, that they hung that. But anyway, yeah, it just is, it's amazing, Yahusha. Amazing that we have it.
It is. And I think you're right, Mary, because now what we've talked about is the Azazel goat. We haven't got to the, James touched a bit on the sacrifice, it's sacrificial goat or lamb. But the point is that we have these two things, and the ultimate is Yahusha. So we don't need another sacrifice for sure. But, in everything, he has culminated the law, and the law of Moses and the prophets. So I think that's, John, you got something to say on that part?
Not necessarily. No, I was looking here at as we keep going, of course we have that he sprinkles the blood to set apart the altar, right, and to make it kodesh, to make it set apart, from the Israelites' impurities. So all of their sins don't get on the altar. And I also find it interesting then when you get down to verse 26, the man that releases the goat for Azazel is to wash his clothes, bathe his body in water, and afterward he may re-enter the camp. So he's taken this goat out, right? Aaron puts his hands on it. The sins are laid on that goat. It's taken out. But he has to wash his body and his clothes so that any lingering sin isn't there. Right. Yeah. So that's this picture. To me, it's almost a picture of baptism, right? To wash, and I don't know what the Hebrew word is there for this one, but It just gives me this picture that we're to wash ourselves of all of our sin, all of our impurity, that we're to try to distance ourselves from, right? So
Right.
that we're not caught up in keeping our hand tied into Azazel, into that sin that can so easily entangle us. But to wash ourselves from it, to get away from it, so we
Amen.
can enter back into the camp,
Amen.
into the kingdom. So
Hallelujah. Yeah, and it's interesting. It's the 7 times again, right?
right.
7 times, which we talked about, I think last week, wasn't it, James, or the week before? I think it was the week before, or was it last week? I'm not sure. And then the 8s also came up, which is interesting. And then the 10s. So it's quite wonderful how these things work. Yeah, so 21, Aaron shall lay both his hands upon the head of the live goat and confess over him all the iniquities of the children of Yasharel and all their transgressions in all their sins, putting them upon the head of the goat, and shall send him away by the hand of a fit man into the wilderness. And, John, that's just describing what you were just saying. So all those sins are upon them, and that's why he has to wash himself again, because he's touched an unclean thing. He's touched an unclean animal, and he has to come and wash himself. And the goat shall bear upon him all their iniquities unto the land not inhabited, and he shall go, let go the goat in the wilderness. All right, so now we obviously come bring that back. We can bring that back to John the Baptist, Yochanan the Mercer, that he was the voice crying in the wilderness, right? And all these scriptures we cannot read without reading Hebrews, really. The whole chapter, the whole book of Hebrews is so full of these exact things, where first of all, in Hebrews 4, I think it's 4, or 7, where you read about the Levitical priesthood having to do atonement for themselves first, so that they can be holy before Yah, before doing atonement for Yasharel. And then we get and then obviously we get the Malachi Tzedek priesthood, which Yahusha now is fulfilling, which is a better priesthood, if you will. James, please take it away.
So when I was reading this portion this week, I wanted to go back and watch the Out of Africa series that you did, that I got to be a part of last year. There was so much great information that you brought that I had really never heard before. And so now that you're mentioning Hebrews 4, there was a verse I wanted to read to kind of tie it back to what you were talking about a few minutes ago, and the narrow path walk that we're on. No one can walk that path for us. We have to do it our own. And in Hebrews 4:16, it says, "Let us therefore come boldly unto the throne of grace," or that mercy seat, "that we may obtain mercy and find grace to help in time of need." I think the key word there is boldly. The narrow path is not for the weak. It's not for the lazy. It's not for the fearful. It's not an easy path, but you have to come with boldness in order to stay upon it. And that scripture really hit home for me this week.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Yeah, thank you for that. That is marvelous, because, what is it if we cannot come boldly before him now after what he's done for us? If we understand what he's done for us, then there's nothing that can stop us from coming unto him directly. I think that's beautiful, James. I really do. I think that's such a profound thought pattern. And I think, for all those who are laboring, who are tired, who are ill, and then we can go back to the book of Hebrews as well, lift up the hands that hang low and the feeble, strengthen the feeble knees, you know, because, and you know, I say that with trepidation. I mean, I know people are suffering in a big way, and I know that people are suffering in hardships that really in the flesh and in the mind we have a difficult time dealing with. But I think through Yahweh and Yahusha, we can get to a place where we can be refreshed and strong enough to grip and hold on our own understanding. And we don't have to rely on other people's, what they think of us. We don't have to rely on what other people say of us. This is between you and Yah, you know, and if we're going to be peculiar, and if we're going to be a people that is reviled, disliked, hated even, then so be it. That's what we're called to be. And I know that some of us have and are going through such a hard time, you know, but Yah is our strength, and we've got to rely on him because he's the one that keeps us to the end. It's his power, it's his Aleph that is the strength to keep us. And I think we've got to just hold on to that, because that's the only thing that we really have. Good. Another scripture that I'd like to bring out, I think, John, you mentioned it. And this shall be a statute forever unto you. It's verse 29 of 16. That in the 7th month, on the 10th day, of the month, he shall afflict at your souls and do no work at all, whether it be one of your own country, nor a stranger that sojourns among you. So there we get the, and just for figure's sake, right? Just for the figure's sake, once again, the 10 and the 7. And if we take the 7 from 19, then it's 7 times 70. And we're talking about atonement here. So it's just such a special thing for me to think, Yahusha says, you know, forgive your brother 70 times 7 every day for the sin that he commits, day in and day out. And I mean, you know, so we've got a 70 and a times 7 here. And to me, it says, well, who is Yahusha? He's the word. So when he speaks things of the word, he's talking about himself. He's not talking about anything else. He's talking about who he is, what he is. And that 70 times 7 sort of just came through to me again, reading this, although I think we did discuss it a week or two ago. And it shall be of the Sabbath day rest for you, and he shall afflict your souls, and it should be a statute forever. Good. I think if we go on to chapter 17, then we look at 17 verse 7, and it says, and they shall no more offer their sacrifices unto devils, after whom they have gone a-whoring. And once again, we see there the spiritual side of Yasharel and of us when we follow other Elohim, when we continue to do and work after the things that are not of Yah, right? I mean, the dead works, even if they seem to be good, but we're just doing them because we want to be seen, or we want to be heard, or, you know, I don't know if anybody else wants to say something about that.
Well, I do. It's interesting. Now it says the devils there, but the Holman uses the terminology of goat demons. And I think the Hebrew word, if I remember looking it up right, is satyr, which is actually that picture of part goat, part human. And so to me, it brings it to mind in Matthew 16:13, where he's on his way and they stop at Caesarea Philippi. And this is where Yahusha says, who do you say I am? And he's saying this in front of the cave of Pan, who happens to be a satyr, or the goat god, see? And so again, this all comes full circle. I think it's very interesting that the goat is the one who gets its hands laid on it to for all the sin to be laid on it. And now we see this is they're goat devils, or these demons. So it's all kind of full circle, right? Yah he never misses a beat. He's got everything covered, you know. And so I see that very interesting, how this all works. That's exactly what Yasharel was doing then. And later on we see that in chapter 18, I think it says that, you know, they're to bring their sacrifices to the temple to get it slaughtered, because they were offering it out on the hills and the high places and to all these other demonic gods, right? So they were saying that was Yahweh. We're offering this to him, but it really wasn't. Just like just like the golden calf. What does Aaron say? Here's Yahweh. This is who you should worship. But it was the golden calf, right? So this is this picture. They went and were worshiping in their own way, which is the very thing that the Church of Laodicea is accused of doing. It's people's opinion. They're worshiping Yah in their way, not in the way that he prescribes, not in the things that he said to do, but they do it in their own way, right? And when you're trying to share with people, what's the response? Well, that's not what it means to me. Well, it doesn't matter what it means to you, or it doesn't matter what it means to me. It's what does the word say, right?
Amen.
So this is this picture that I see. It always goes full circle. Yah always has his bases covered, just like the Day of Atonement. He covers the sin for all of Yasharel. On this day, you will be cleansed, right? On that day specifically, you will be cleansed from all your sin. So I just think that's pretty cool. And then if you go to Isaiah 58, which we don't need to go there, but it teaches what is that, how are we to live out that Day of Atonement? In my opinion, that's what Isaiah 58 is all about, how we are to sacrifice that when we're fasting, what are we doing on that day? Are we taking things to the poor? Are we taking things to the needy? Which takes us right back to Matthew 25, the sheep and the goats once again. So I'm done.
Excellent. Yeah, I saw Jennifer just wrote here. She wrote, I can't remember the exact words, but in the pan and the way that they sacrifice goats and dogs, right? Very interesting, because if you look at the gematria of dog, and if you look at the way that English language was made, God and dog are opposites, right? Well, if you put God, dog, it's a palindrome. So it's spelled the same forward and backward. But the point is that I'm trying to make is that when these people, the Baphometic people, the people who worship these things, the people who sacrifice unto these things, essentially the secret, if you will, societies, they will take the dog, sacrifice it because they say it's God. And then you also get the dog that guards Hades. It's called Anubis, right? So they're saying, well, this is your God. So it's a mockery of the Elohim. It's a mockery of the word Elohim. It's the mockery of the words that we use. And that's why it's important to get to the real names of Yah, Yahweh, Yahusha. Because we do not, and I know, you know, I'm not saying that I don't want to be a name police, but what I do want to put out there is that we cannot be deceived by any of this nonsense that's going around, because it is sorcery nonetheless. It's the playing of words, and the playing of words is sorcery, and they do use this kind of thing. Now, Yah is obviously on our side, and he fights first, and he will be there for us. And if you call upon his name, he will save you. And and even if you call upon the name that we used to use, it's not that you're not going to be saved. I don't believe that one bit, because Yah is a Yah of love, and he will lead his people into the belief. You believe on the person, on what he's done. But at the moment, when we step into the time as this and the time that's coming, and the hard time, I think that's where it really starts to make sense to know the names, because in John 17, as we know, I think it's verse 27, that I've declared unto these that you have given me the name, right? The name, so that the love wherewith we have had and it can be in them and I am. And I think that's so that's very, very interesting, because love drives away the fear, right? So when we have fear in our hearts, let's call upon the name of Yahweh. Let's call upon Yah and Yahusha. Let's get rid of other things that are making us fearful. Let's get rid of other things that are wishy-washy, but let us look to the things that are truth, and let us look to the things that give us strength, the things of Yah that gives us strength. I think that's I don't know if I've said too much, but I think it's quite important to get it out there. If nobody else has got something to say, then let's move on. Let's go to verse 11 of 17, because that's quite an important verse. For the soul of the flesh is in the blood, and he and I have given it to you upon the altar to make an atonement for your souls. For it is the blood of him that makes an atonement in the soul. Therefore I said unto the children of Yasharel, no soul of you shall eat blood, neither shall any stranger that sojourns among you eat blood. And whatsoever man there be of the children of Yasharel, or of the strangers that sojourn among you, which hunts and catches any beast or fowl that may be eaten, he shall even pour out the blood thereof and cover it with dust. For it is the life of all flesh, the blood of it is for the life thereof. Therefore I said unto the children of Yasharel, he shall eat the blood of no manner of flesh, for the life of the flesh is in the blood thereof. Whosoever eats it shall be cut off. So, who would like to start?
Okay, so I have a question.
Okay.
Just about this, and I guess it'll lead into a further discussion. I've read this and read this and read this, and I want to know when this changed. When did it become okay?
Okay, in what sense? You're just going to have to give us a little bit of a...
Okay, when did it become okay?
Yeah.
When did it become okay for us to eat animals?
Oh, okay. I understand what you're saying.
Well,
I can't answer that question.
well, it says to Noah, and I don't, off the top of my head, I don't have the passage, but it said that they were to be eaten for you. And of course, we're going to get into, I thought, well, where was the food chapter here? Back a little ways, right? I think we covered it probably 3 weeks ago, that what's clean and unclean. You know?
Yeah.
So it's not a matter of if we eat the animal that we're eating the blood. It's very specific here that if we're going to eat the animal, I think in chapter 18, if you slay an animal out in the wilderness, you shoot a deer or anything like that the blood is to go on the ground and to be covered up. So you're not technically eating the blood, like if you're slaughtering a cow or anything like that. But so that's kind of my point of view, I guess. I find it interesting, though, that here, the way that it's read in the Sefer, as Chris just read, then when Yahusha says that this is my body and this is my blood, right? So in other words, we aren't to eat any other than Yahusha. All the rest of this is not for us. It's all unclean, but he in the representation of the wine, his blood is for us, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think that makes sense completely, John, in the fact that it is a spiritual, it's a spiritual, we don't drink his blood, right? Obviously.
Right. It's not the Eucharist where they're going up and squeezing the blood out every week. No. That's not the picture.
Yeah. So it is the spiritual side of eating and drinking this word that we're reading, because that is who he is, right?
Right.
He is the word made flesh. And so when we partaking of this right now here, we are actually doing that as well. We are taking part of his body and his blood in that sense. And I'm not talking about now the sacrament of, if you want to call it that. I mean, we're not talking about the bread and the wine now. We're talking about sharing the word and breaking it open and giving it to us, right? Because he gives it to us. So James, you would like to add something to that?
Yeah, when I'm reading this, I'm looking at it, you know, the life is in the blood. And I think of Cain and Abel, how his blood cried out, his spilled blood cried out from the ground. And I'm thinking of, you know, all the innocent bloodshed that's taken place, whether it be the babies or anyone. And so I kind of see it as, you know, we are not to partake in that, the sacrifice or shedding of innocent blood. Just another kind of way I'm looking at this.
Mm. Mm. Yeah, that definitely makes sense. And also, you know, we've got to understand that there is a blood that flows in the vein. There is a blood that blood that flows in your arteries, that goes to your lungs, that supplies your body with what it needs. It goes to all the parts to get the nutrients and to get the oxygen to supply your body. Now that's the stuff that we're talking about that you shall not drink. It's not the blood that comes out of the meat when you get a steak on your plate. That's not the blood. We're talking seriously here about drinking the blood that comes from the vein, or opening some animal's neck and catching that blood that flows out, right? And that's the stuff that we're talking about, because that's I was going to say horrible, but for anybody who knows anything about slaughtering animals, that blood curdles. That blood gets jelly-like. That blood is a blood that's it's of a different substance than the blood that comes from the meat.
Right. And also, I think we got to keep this all in the proper context here in the narrative, right? So in chapter 16, we're speaking about the Day of Atonement. And here in 17, that Yahusha's blood is the atoning sacrifice. It is this, it's in this narrative. We always have to keep the context in mind. This is all coming, that Yahusha's blood atoned for the sin, right? For our sin, for the sin of Yasharel, for all who are gathered into him. So
yeah,
anyway.
Yeah,
Agreed. Thank you, gentlemen. Agreed. I appreciate it.
It's a pleasure, Alina. I hope we have helped you.
Yeah, that's fine. Thank you.
Thank you. I see there were some comments there. I can't read them all, so I don't know if anybody's. I see Sherry and Anya put something up, but I didn't really. Well, I suppose I can go to the chat. So.
Can I say something real quick,
Yes,
you guys?
please, Carla, please.
Shabbat shalom. I was
Shabbat
as you
shalom.
guys said, as we're talking about the blood, and I want to basically pick up where Brother John left off. I think I get the idea that you're trying to convey. So animal blood, all flesh does see corruption, yet Messiah's blood is alive forever. It does not corrupt. So in the wine, when it's represented of his blood, yes, we are to take his living blood, and only that one, because that's the only one that provides life and does not corrupt.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah, And I think, Carla, if I may, I want to add there to that because, you know, the father of Yahusha is Yahweh, if you will, in the Ruach Elohim, right? That came upon Mary. So there is no father, if you will, that is pure Ruach Elohim. So I think, you know, that is Carla here? Oh, there she is. I think that also adds to it, Carla, you know, that the whole essence of Yahusha himself is from Elohim. So when we take of him, we're taking of life and life in abundance. I think that's just another thought that we can add to that, if that makes sense at all. Sherry writes here, it's a pagan practice to drain the blood from the neck and drink it. Yeah, I mean, that's something that is abhorrible unto Yah. And then Anya says, what about donating blood or receiving blood from someone? It's an interesting point, Anya, but I don't think that that's necessarily, you know, that's not the same thing as drinking blood. That is something that is maybe in the medical field to help somebody from dying. I don't have a stance on that. I mean, what does anybody else have a strong stance on that, or a strong belief or thought on that?
I want to say that Yahusha says that there is no greater love than for a person to lay down his life for a friend. And where he says the life is in the blood, I believe if it is given to save another life, then it is acceptable.
I would tend to agree with you, Sherry, but you know, I don't want to offend anybody here, but I agree. I mean, I can't see that if you are helping somebody to survive, that it is sinful. And blood giving is not really a new thing anyway. You know, it's not like, you know, we're putting your blood through a machine and changing it and giving it back to you. It's pretty much, anyway, I don't know. There was another thing that I was thinking of. I was thinking of, the life in the blood. The life in the blood is very interesting because in Hebrews 4, if we don't mind, I can quickly just read it. It says here, in Hebrews 4, it says here, for the word of Yahweh is quick and powerful and sharper than any two-edged sword, piercing even into the dividing and sunder of the ruach, the soul and the ruach, so of soul and ruach, and of the joints and the marrow. And it's a discerner of the thoughts and the intents of the heart. And here we see that thing, right? So the word of Yahweh comes in between the soul and the ruach. That's where the blood is, right? The blood and the ruach, okay? But it goes deeper because it says dividing asunder and of the joints and the marrow. Well, that's where the blood's made. Blood is made in your marrow. So if you've got a marrow problem, you've got possibly a leukemic problem, a leukemia. And where the joints are, the balls of the ball joints of your bones, that's where the blood comes out when it's made. So it's interesting to have this combination, and that's also where your joints are. So it speaks of, first of all, the ruach and the soul. Then it speaks of the movements and where you are and where you are going and what you have been created for. And then it talks about the discerner of the thoughts and the intents of the heart. Well, I think within all these aspects comes the one thing that Yah knows is the discernment of your heart through the creating of the blood, through where you are, what you are doing with your whole body, what you are grasping, what you are, where you're walking to. You know, all these things are part of the walk and the interesting facets of life. And Yah should be in control of all of those, or rather be in the forefront of all of those in our minds, because once our minds get subject to the Ruach Elohim and the Word, well, then we're walking in a better relationship with it. I think that's quite a nice thing to think about.
Right. So if you read the next verse there, Chris, no creature is hidden from him, but all things are naked and exposed to the eyes of him to whom we must give account. Right. So then that takes us right back to the garden, which is when they sin, they noticed they were naked, right? Which is all just what we're talking about is the atonement for the sin. So it all, again, it keeps coming full circle.
All comes back, eh? And this is I think James and I talked about it on one or two of the programs that we did together, is that Hebrew way of thinking of discerning and thinking and working things out. It's always in a circle. It's a poetic way of it's a more poetic prose way of thinking instead of a Roman Greco way is pretty much linear. It's in a straight line. So we start here and we end over there, but where we started is different to where we and I think that can be a little bit of a difference of changing your mindset, that actually you're no different from when you were 20 years ago. Well, you're not in a different place. You're in the same body. You're in the same circle of friends. Well, maybe a different circle of friends, but definitely same family. And so when we're walking in this walk, don't run away too far from people. It doesn't help, because tomorrow morning when you wake up, you're with the same people that you were with yesterday. And I think that can also lead to the thought process of helping us understand. And it's a pity we don't understand this when I was 20 years old, because I've woken up many a day in my home, having to sort of backtrack a few things that I've said the day before. But yeah, I think that's an important thing to think about, is when we do things, remember that, you can't run away from the things we say. We can't run away from the things we do and say. Let's leave it at that. Okay, so 18 comes back to exactly what John has talked about, I think, because here we see, especially from verse 6, we talk about the nakedness, right? We talk about don't uncover the nakedness of your family. Don't uncover the nakedness of your kinsmen, of those that are related to you. Those are of your father's wife, or don't do it, because it's once again, I suppose it's the same thing that you're going to wake up tomorrow in the same place. Well, what are you going to you can't do things on your own front porch and then still have a Yah-fearing life. Fear Yah first. Look for his commandments, look for his statutes, walk in them, and then you will have peace. And I think that's important for all of us to understand. When you and I want to talk evilly about each other, here in this group, in any other group, then we still have to wake up the next day in the same place. And it doesn't help for me to throw you guys away and then say, yeah, but you know what, I've got a different thinking. Well, we're all part of the same body. You can't do that. It's impossible. We've got to work things out. We've got to love each other no matter what, right?
I think so. Chris, I think the first few verses here of chapter 18 are important for us to apply to our life.
Okay.
Right? So starting in verse 2, speak to the Israelites and tell them, I, Yahweh, your Elohim, do not follow the practices of the land of Egypt where you used to live, or follow the practices of the land of Canaan where I am bringing you. You must not follow their customs. You are to practice my ordinances. You are to keep my statutes. By following them, I, Yahweh, your Elohim, keep my statutes and ordinances, a person will live if he does them. I am Yahweh. I think that's an important aspect that we have to keep in our mind all the time, that if we want to be a part of his kingdom, it's open to everyone, but it's exclusionary. That's my view of our walk. It's open to all, but it's exclusionary. You have to be obedient, right? So
I think that's a great point, John. And I think, if we go back a little bit, John, and then we look at the whoring after, so verse 17, chapter 17, verse 7, and they shall no more offer their sacrifice unto devils after whom they have gone a whoring, right? Then after this verse that you've just read, we go through all this, don't uncover the nakedness of your family, etc., etc., etc.
Right.
Then if we go to verse 21, we can catch up with the same thought pattern once again. And you shall not let any of your seed pass through into the fire unto Molech. The fire is not there in the scripture, right? It just says pass through to Molech. Neither shall you profane at the name of your Elohim. I am Yahweh. You shall not lie with mankind as with womankind, it's abomination. Neither shall you lie with any beast to defile yourself therewith. Neither shall any woman stand before a beast to lie down thereunto. It is confusion. Then it says here, defile ye not yourselves in any of these things, nor in the things of the nations that defile, which I cast out before you. So there we get why Yah casts these people out, right, in the first place. And then why should he not cast you out if you do exactly the same thing, right? And verse 25, it says, and the land is defiled, therefore do I visit the iniquity thereof upon it, and the land itself vomits out her inhabitants. So, there again is a promise, or rather a protection and a curse. Don't do it so these things don't happen to you. But when you do it, the land's going to vomit you out. And this is something that's so important for us as Yasharali to be shouting from the rooftops to those that are in control of us. Watch out. This is nothing that I stand for. You guys are doing something that I do not stand for. Have a strong point against it. And I think if we keep silent, then we partakers of it.
Right. So then, verse 28 then, right? If you defile the land, it will vomit you out as it had vomited out the nations that were before you, right? So it's very clear. If the nation is doing that, that's exactly what it says in Romans 1, right? The very last part of Romans 1. I'll try to get there very quickly to read it. But he's speaking very clearly that although they know full well Yah's just sentence that those who practice such things deserve to die, they not only do them, but they even applaud others who practice them. That's the very end of Romans 1, how he's speaking about not the very thing that we're talking about in Leviticus 17 and 18, right? This is what he's talking about here. And so he says, they even applaud it. Not only do they turn their face, but they applaud it, right? Look at what's going on in the United States today. They're applauding transgenderism. They're applauding all of this evil, right? Evil is called good and good is called evil now. And the few people are stepping up and saying anything are silenced. See, so that's, I think you're right. We need to shout it from the rooftops and say, this is not what we adhere to, because that's the very thing in Ezekiel, chapter 9, the inkhorn, right? When he's going through and marking the people, it's those who took opposition to what was evil. The ones who agreed with it, the ones who went along with the evil, they didn't get the inkhorn mark. So that's, I think, this picture of the marking in the last days as well. So,
Amen. Well, let's go to Psalm 106, 36 to 39. And I'm sorry that I wasn't there beforehand. Should have been. 106, 36 to 39. It says here, and they served their idols, which were a snare unto them. Yea, they sacrificed their sons and their daughters unto Shediim, and shed innocent blood, even the blood of their sons and of their daughters, whom they sacrificed unto idols of Canaan, and the land was polluted with blood. Thus were they defiled with their own works, and went a whoring with their own inversions. You know, I mean, if that doesn't say it, yeah. And then obviously that one scripture which we talked about earlier on is in Zephaniah, and I believe it's Zephaniah 1:1-4. And the word of Yahweh which came unto Zephaniah, the son of Cushi, the son of Gad Olayu, the son of Aradu, the son of Jesikiahu, in the days of Yoshiahu, the son of Ammon, the king of Yehuda. I will utterly consume all the things from off the land, says Yahweh. I will consume man and beast. I will consume the fowls of the heavens, and the fish of the sea, and the stumbling blocks with the wicked. And I will cut off the man from off the land, says Yahweh. I will also stretch out my hand upon Yehuda, and upon all the inhabitants of Jerusalem, and I will cut off the remnant of Baal from this place, and if the name of the Kedoshim with the priests. So you see, and them that worship the hosts of the heaven upon the housetops, and them that worship and swear by Yahweh, that swear by Malachi. So I think that's also interesting, because here he's talking about, you know, these people were doing all these funny things, and I'm going to cut them off. They're abomination to me. So there lies our strength, right? When we're walking in the ways of Yah. Good, and I think that draws close Leviticus. So I don't know how much time have we got there, John? Or,
It says 11:38, so maybe 5-10 minutes.
I think, you know, let us go then, if you don't mind, just for a section, because we talked about it earlier on. Let's go to the Besorah section just for, just want to get it here. What was the Besorah section? It was in John 7, wasn't it? Or was it in John 7? No, in the Sefer, in the other one, it was, I think, Luke. Can anybody remember, or did anybody follow that one? Okay. Let me just see here. I didn't have it written down, so, but I think it's 7. No. Okay. People.
So the Sefer says John 7, 1-52.
Is it John 7? Okay. Thanks. Thanks. John 7. Okay, no, I don't think it was here, actually, to be honest with you. Must have been somewhere else that we read. Anyway, so I think if there's anything else that somebody else would like to add, that would be great.
I love how through these portions, even next week, we're going to see a lot. Next week's name's Kedoshim, holy. You know, we're seeing that a lot in these portions. Be holy because I am holy. Be set apart because I am set apart. You know, he set the Israelites apart from Mitzvah. They're free on their own. They're not under the bondage of Mitzrayim. So now they're going to be encountering these new nations that are full of wickedness. And it's like he's just trying to get that ingrained into their mind because he knows what's coming, you know, what temptations lie ahead. And it's just, I really, that's become one of my favorite words to ponder on is set apart. You know, I want to be set apart, peculiar, whatever that takes. You know that Yah is set apart. So that's what we need to strive for as well.
Amen. Wow, that is. Well, you know what? I mean, I just say that I love our discussions here on the Sabbath because it brings such beautiful stuff to the forefront. And I mean, you know, it doesn't matter, you know, who brings it forth. All of us have got something to share and something to add to this fellowship. And I think it's very important that we continue doing so, that we continue preparing ourselves for this reading so that we can bring something to the table, you know, and share with each other. So thank you so much to everybody that has joined. Thank you so much to well, I would say the learned people of this group, James and John. We love you guys.
I would say everyone. I wouldn't want to limit it like that, Chris. That's dangerous ground there.
Yeah, but you know, we're family, right? So we can have a laugh and we can joke with each other because you know, we and I mean, you know, it's not a joke in the fact that you know what I mean. It's love, right? It's love and it's friendship, and everyone here we respect and we love. We thank everybody for being here. So I think with that, Gabriella, we can end this meeting. And James, I don't know if you would love to pray for us today.
I sure can. Father, we just thank you for this fellowship, this set apart time, this Shabbat that we know is a sign between you and us, that we can give you the praise, that we can allow you to dwell within us in this time of rest and pray for restoration, that we can endure through these times, the trials and tribulations that we encounter on our walk, on that narrow path. We all are facing our own challenges, but we look to you for guidance, for faith, for strength, and for all those blessings that you have promised us. Be with us as we go our separate ways. Continue to heal us physically, mentally, and spiritually. We just trust you and ask for your guidance with each step that we take. In your name, Yahusha, amen.
Amen. And Shabbat Shalom to everybody.
Thank you. Shabbat shalom.
Shalom.
Shabbat shalom.